Witness is here in person, Mr. James Troupis. Mr. Troupis serves as the lead attorney for the Trump campaign in Wisconsin. From 2015 to 2016, Mr. Troupis served as the circuit court judge in Dane County, Wisconsin. He is currently a partner at the Troupis Law Office. Mr. Troupis.
I'm honored to be here, Senator. Thank you for the invitation. I've submitted written testimony, which I'd ask to be in the record, and I'm going to provide additional remarks at this point.
By the way, without objection, everybody's submitted testimony is automatically entered in the record, so go ahead.
Thank you. So the absentee voting in Wisconsin is treated quite differently, I believe, than other parts of the country. Let me read for you what the legislature found. It's in our statutes. It says that the legislature finds that the privilege of voting by absentee ballot must be carefully regulated to prevent the potential for fraud or abuse, to prevent overzealous solicitation of absent electors who may prefer not to participate in an election, to prevent undue influence on an absent elector to vote for or against a candidate. As a consequence, our laws are strictly construed, and even more so, let me read again from the law, results which do not comply with those regulations, quote, may not be included in the certified result of any election. So it's very straightforward that the state of Wisconsin has taken a very different view of in-person voting with all the protections and absentee voting that has been repeatedly, including in the Carter Commission report, thought to be a source of significant potential for fraud. In Wisconsin, we just completed a recount. We had more than 2,500 volunteers, or probably more than 1,000 volunteers for the Biden campaign as well. Uniquely, we are able to examine actual envelopes that contain the ballots that are submitted by absentee voters. This allowed us to identify by person, by address, by ward. It's not conspiracy. The real names are in the record. And here's what we found. We found that there were incomplete and altered certificates. These are the certificates on the front of the envelopes that have to be exactly done correctly under our law. If not, those results may not be counted. How many of those? More than 3,000 of those identified by person were nonetheless counted, even though they are clearly invalid under the law. A second category. Initials of clerks are placed on all of those envelopes. Why? Because the clerk identifies it having been properly received and identification is provided. That's the check in advance of the election. What did we find? More than 2,000 of those ballots in Dane and Milwaukee County had no initials at all, but nonetheless, they got counted. We also have special laws in Wisconsin with regard to voting in advance. We do not allow advance voting. We allow in-person and other voting as absentees. So anything before Election Day is under our absentee rules. What did the city of Madison do? They created a system where people could arrive at a park, hand in their ballots in envelopes 5 weeks before the election. They also created boxes. No controls at all, just boxes on corners that you could throw the ballot in. No attempt at all. And our statutes explicitly say there are only 2 ways to submit an absentee ballot: in person or delivery to the clerk's office. That's it. Nothing else is allowed. And yet the city of Madison, we had 17,271 ballots in this category that we identify. There are tens of thousands more because they commingled the ballots afterwards, so we couldn't identify each one that may have been improperly cast. Then we have an interesting category called indefinitely confined. These are people which the statute, I read from the statute, by age, physical illness, or infirmity, or are disabled indefinitely. Among those claiming this status, so they don't have to provide any identification, among those claiming this status is one of the electors for Joe Biden. Who said, I can't get to the polls. We have poll workers who claimed it. We have people who went to protests, people who had weddings, people who had vacations, all claimed this status. I can't get to the polls, so they were able to vote without identification. There were 28,395 people we explicitly identified. Finally, there are other categories. in which as much as 170,000 other ballots were submitted without any application. In fact, they considered the certification envelope the application, though a separate application is required by law. 3 million people properly voted in the state of Wisconsin. More than 200,000 identified during this recount did not. But those votes got counted, and our statute says they should not have been. That, in our view, is a taint on our election in Wisconsin. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Troupis. And I believe Joe Biden won our state by about 20,000 votes.
Correct.
And you're talking about over 200,000 that were outside of our law that probably, if the law would have been followed, probably shouldn't have been counted.
Correct.
Should not have been accepted, shouldn't have been put in the ballot pool. And, of course, the remedy is not particularly pleasing, which is one of the reasons the decision went its way. I'll come back to you.